Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Flying Officer Gregory Young. We warmly welcome the family of Private Charles Edward Leigh, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Thank you. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Charles Leigh. Charles Edward Leigh was born on May 1898 in Preston, Lancashire, a cotton weaving town in England's industrial north. Several years earlier, his parents, Charles and Emma, had begun their family at the age of 16. Emma was busy raising a rapidly expanding family, while Charles Sr., a butcher by trade, Charles Jr., the eldest surviving son, eventually followed in his father's footsteps. Looking for new opportunities, the family decided to emigrate to Australia. In 1911, Charles Sr. and Jr. led the way, arriving in Brisbane in late March. 3 months later, Emma and the rest of the children, 7 girls and 2 boys, ranging in the ages from 3 months to 15 years old, arrived and the family was reunited in Melbourne. They soon settled in Dandenong, a small but growing town southeast of Melbourne. Known for its thriving livestock market, it was a perfect place for Charles Leigh and son to establish an abattoir and butcher shop. Charles Jr. attended St Mary's Primary School and later Dandenong State School. When not at school, he was likely busy helping his father with the business, although he did some part-time service with the local senior cadets for 5 years. In May 1917, Charles Leigh had turned 19. When the State Recruiting Committee of Victoria came around looking to recruit 60 men for a Dandenong platoon, he answered the call. Signing up on the 3rd of May in his hometown, Charles was allotted to the 25th Reinforcements for the 14th Infantry Battalion. After proceeding to the recruit depot at Broadmeadows, he went up to Seymour for several weeks of training on trench mortars. In August, he came down with the mumps, so he and the others who had been around him ended up in isolation camp in Melbourne for 3 weeks. Having recovered, Charles embarked at Melbourne for overseas service, departing on the troop ship Nestor on the 21st of November 1917. After brief stopovers at Port Suez, Alexandria and Taranto, the ship arrived at Southampton, England on the 5th of January 1918. 3 months of further training at Codford followed, after which Charles sailed from Dover to Calais. He arrived at a critical time of the war. Just 11 days beforehand, the Germans had launched a massive offensive on the Western Front in an all-out bid to win the war, or at least force a favourable end to it. Reeling back in disarray on many sections of the front, by the end of the march, the British had retreated up to 60 kilometres in places. Australian troops were rushed down from Belgium to help stop the enemy advance. On the 17th of April, Charles and over 100 other reinforcements found the 14th Battalion at Hebuterne, just north of the town of Albert. He joined the battalion's trench mortar section. Known as Charlie to his new comrades, he was well liked and fitted into army life very well. The battalion remained at Hebuterne in cold, misty conditions, manning the trenches until the end of the month. Next, the battalion was moved further south to the other side of the Somme at Villers-Bretonneux, just where days before the Australians had won a famous victory. As spring gave way to summer, the 14th Battalion was moved to Allenville, a rest area behind the front near Amiens, where they conducted training mixed with periods of rest and leisure. On the 29th of May, A and C companies played a cricket match. 2 nights later, the same 2 companies were billeted in a pair of huge barns in town. Shortly after 1 a.m. on the 31st of May, German artillery shells scored direct hits on them. Crashing through the roof, the shells exploded upon the hundreds of sleeping men. The carnage was indescribable. 18 men killed outright, 68 were wounded. One wounded man with both legs cut off above the knee said selflessly to rescuers, "I'm all right, get the badly wounded boys out." Charlie's leg was shattered and he was rushed to the nearby 10th Field Ambulance, where they had to amputate. But he didn't make it, dying around 6 a.m. The next day, he was buried at the nearby Longo Military Cemetery. He was 20 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour to my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of your headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Charles Edward Leigh, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorials Development Project. And we wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.